Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to our stage here at the Build It Right 2020 conference. Hope you've been enjoying your experience on Hop-In today and at all the sessions. There has been lots going on and so I'm excited to be hosting this panel. So my name's Anne-Marie Imafidon. I am CEO and co-founder of STEMETS. I'm host of the Women Tech Charge podcast, and I'm also trustee at the Institute for the Future of Work. But today, I am the Build It Right 2020 conference host. And so I'll be hosting this panel session that we've called Devs Against COVID-19 for you all. I've got lots of questions. There are quite a few panelists that you can all see on your screen, but we want to make this as interactive as possible. So if any of you have any questions, you should be able to see there's a chat. There we go on that side. If you click into stage and type your comments, your questions in there, then we'll make sure to get to them just under Sophie's message that she's got there. And then, yes, refresh the screen if you can't see this podcast, this broadcast even, sorry. So if you've got any questions at any point that you'd like to chip in, any comments, any congratulations you may want to wish one of the panelists, then please do that in the chat on the stage there on the right hand side. So let's get started. I'm going to do some quick introductions and then we'll get talking about our topic for today, and we'll be going for about the next half hour. So first off, my first panelist is Fiona Hobbs. So hi Fiona there. You can see from her t-shirt, there we go. She's a CTO at Opencast Software, who I know are one of the partners for the conference today. And she's an advocate of XP and Scrum practices, speaks at meetups, and has more than 15 years of experience in cutting edge technology projects. So that's our first panelist. In addition to Fiona, I'm joined by Kirste at Worland, who is head of applications at NHS BSA. And she's been working in the IT sector for the last 18 years, gaining some experience at Sage and Your Homes Newcastle. And at the moment, she's working within the NHS Business Services Authority, which if anyone's ever wondered what the BSA stands for, that is what it is. So thank you very much, Kirste, for joining us. For joining us. Our third panelist is Alastair Irons. So Alastair is Academic Dean for Faculty of Technology at Sunderland University with research interests in the field of digital forensics, cybercrime and cybersecurity, but is also incredibly busy at the moment because he's focusing on student assessment and feedback. And as you'll all have heard, there's quite a lot going on around students and universities at the moment. So that's possibly why Alastair's on this panel for Against COVID-19, but we'll be hearing from him shortly. So thanks for joining me, Alastair. And to complete our panel, we've got Steve Richardson, who is product manager for COVID-19 at SACE at HMRC. And many of you will remember kind of towards the beginning of the pandemic, there were several emergency measures that were announced to help workforce during lockdown. So SACE was one to help the self-employed who had lost earnings due to the lockdown, and Steve's going to be busy again as well very shortly with some new announcements that have come from the Chancellor. So thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. So as I said, any questions you've got, pop them in the chat. I'm going to kickstart. You know, we've called this panel Devs Against COVID-19. I'm sure if we were going to say devs for COVID-19, we'd be maybe slightly short of folks to join me to discuss this. But, you know, there's lots of reasons to have been against COVID-19. I think for each of you, there's been quite a forced speed and in technical technological change, and that some of you have been driving, some of you have been kind of working against. How has COVID-19, how has the pandemic affected your organisation and your work so far? And maybe let's start actually with Alastair, kind of based at the university. How has this changed what's going on for you?
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I mean, it's really radical change, and in a number of phases. You know, back in March, we had a kind of firefight to manage our students through the end of term, as every university and college in the country did. The vast majority of people put in a no detriment to students, so we tried very hard to make it as easy as possible for them to continue with their studies without any harm coming to them. And folks put in a huge amount of effort, as I'm sure everyone on the panel will say, that there was a tremendous upsurge in work effort as people work from home. We then went into the summer and trying to prepare for the upcoming semester one, where we're in the middle of, and with moving goalposts almost daily. Had various different things to do. We made the decision early on at Sunderland to have no lectures face to face because of the difficulty in being COVID compliant. We made sure that our buildings were all COVID compliant, so students could come in to the university. We felt it really important that they had that opportunity to meet other students in a safe way, but also to meet academics, so that they felt part of the environment. We're very conscious of their health and well-being, as well as their academic opportunities. And it also became apparent that there was a huge range of accessibility for digital online, and we had the whole range from students saying I can't get access because I've run out of data on my phone, because I'm doing everything on the phone, right through to people who had space at home to work. So a huge number of challenges around the pedagogic side of things and making the environment safe for students to study, but also to think about equality and accessibility in access to education. The one thing that has come out of it, if there is a positive, is that as a sector we've been forced to change, and change quickly. So things that would have taken us 3 to 5 years to work through as good ideas almost happened overnight.
And I think, it's the pace, right? It's the kind of the things on the to-do list. There was the kind of joke going around towards the beginning, kind of what's been the biggest driver for digital change at your organization, and kind of pandemic kind of became that kind of number one thing for that. That's the way to bring about change. So definitely interesting to see the balance between student experience as well as the technology itself. So thanks, Alastair. Fiona, for you at Opencast, I guess you had less of the student experience maybe to consider. What have been some of the biggest changes that you've had for yourself and your partner and your team?
So for me, I think the pandemic's actually brought us together as an organisation. So it's brought people in more into the organisation as a whole, and feeling part of it than what they were before. So we're a services company, and we tend to place teams of people out on client sites to help them with their problems. And so having that connection to the mothership when this was all going on was even more important. So we were doing things around weekly yoga and meditation sessions, and we've sent parcels of cheese out to people in chocolate, and it's actually made the organisation feel it feels a bit nicer and a better place to be. Not that it was bad before, but it just, for me, I'm realising all of the people that I've got around me again. It's great. On the other side, though, because of all the different clients that we do have, so we work really quite heavily with public sector. It's actually we've had a really big uptake in work that we're doing. So we've had to actually bring on, I think it's around 20 people during lockdown, which was interesting and exciting, but that whole onboarding experience and designing that was quite interesting to do. And then there's all the thing around actually for our developers, how do they still maintain what they do that they would do in the office? So things like pair programming and mobbing and peer review, and the chatter that goes on between development teams, and so all the different parts of the development team. We've spent a lot of time working about how we actually still maintain that. So we brought in some new technologies, and we found some ways to use some of our existing technologies around, like we're using Microsoft Teams, and we're doing screen sharing to do mobbing sessions. So I don't feel like we've missed out because we're not there. And so for me, it's had the world is horrible, and that's a negative effect on the organisation. Everything else has been a positive effect for us.
I think, it's the positives of the changes of the cheese and of the chocolate. So I'm liking that kind of the trio of those together.
I wonder what's next. I'm expecting a crate of wine to land on my doors.
Maybe we're in lockdown too now, so it could happen. Steve, Fiona was just talking about onboarding new people into the team. Now, you've been working, of course, on the HMRC side with the entrepreneurs and onboarding lots of new people, but in a slightly different way. Can you talk a little bit about how this has changed? Kind of what were you doing before the pandemic broke, and how has it changed since?
Yeah, it is quite a difficult thing. You know, there are members of staff in my team who I've never met before, other than I see their face on the video, I hear their voice. You've kind of missed that personal contact that they take the person through the service and through how you exist within the team and how we all work. That's all very different. That's not necessarily been really, really bad. It's just a matter of obviously adapting to this new environment, the environment of Zoom and Teams and Hangouts and stuff like that. The team were well versed in that. But what I've found is that in the past, when we're running a team, based up in Newcastle, so I'll have my scrum team in Newcastle. We're all seated together. We all talk together, whiteboards and everything else. Whenever we got a member of staff who wasn't in Newcastle, so may have been posted in London, maybe one of our user researchers was in London, it was always very difficult to communicate with that individual, to bring them into the team event. Now that we're all on the same even keel, because we've all got to do this, we've all got to do the Zoom and the Teams meetings. We've all got to make a very conscious effort to communicate correctly, to make sure we all know what we're doing, because we haven't got those incidental conversations that we've done on the way to the coffee machine or across the desk. I kind of feel it is a lot more inclusive. So when the team started in March, although a vast majority of the team were kind of my Newcastle team, I also had team members in Shipley and I had team members in Worthing, and we were all equal. Everybody responded the same way, and it still felt like a proper team. And I mean, following on from Fiona, obviously, you try to kind of move away a little bit as well to make sure that it's not all work, because the working environment isn't all work. We spend a lot of time at work, a lot of our lives, so we must enjoy it a little bit. And we've had a couple of virtual nights out, which is basically just we're sitting there and drinking beer and talking to each other over a Teams meeting or a Hangout meeting. But it's a little bit of a little bit more interactive. I think we have a team lunch on a Friday, which is about an hour, where the team, we don't talk about work, we just eat our lunch and have a drink and have a little chat with each other, like we might have done if we were back at the office. So yeah,
I think we've definitely ended up having
interesting times.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're having to kind of go the extra mile to make sure that everyone is included, but also having to spend a little bit more time, because I know mental health has definitely been something that's preoccupied people's minds more, and we've had to be, especially now going into the winter lockdown, be more vigilant, I guess, about making sure that we're supporting each other and being supported. Now, Kirste, I'd argue that you're kind of closest to COVID, being our rep from the NHS here. Kind of if you could narrow it down, what's been the biggest technological change? What's changed for you on your end? Is Kirste on mute?
I think Kirste's hearing us.
Oh, she's shaking her head. Can you hear us? Oh, she's going to drop out and come back. That's fine. Yeah, so Kirsty's been having technical issues even, so that's okay. So let's head into the questions. Thanks very much to those of you that have joined us and are asking questions. And this is a one from Chris that came in really early doors, and kind of any of you can pick this up. I imagine Fiona and Steve might have something to say on this in particular. So Chris has asked, how difficult has onboarding new developers remotely been during the pandemic? I know, Steve, you mentioned there's kind of members of your team you've never met before. You know, what's that been like, that onboarding process?
I'm back. Sorry, I'm back.
In particular around developers, what I've kind of found is in the past, the team had been fairly focused around the Scrum Master and the product manager. But in this environment, the developer community has set its own community up amongst themselves with the lead developer, and actually they run individual sessions. They also do, obviously, pair programming is as standard, or even like sort of like a mob situation where actually all the developers will just come in and go through a process. So as far as onboarding is concerned, I mean, my involvement in there was really to make sure that everybody gets a view of what the product is and the high level view and where we're going to. And it was usually the lead dev would then onboard the developers beyond there. And as I say, that became like a more of an independent sort of like state within the team itself. And I mean, in essence, what we tended to find is, while we were going through development stages, the developers are kind of the guys that know anyway. As long as we're giving them a good vision and a view, maybe some guidance with a ticket, the developers could go off and run with the product as long as they knew the direction we were going and how we were going to deliver it. And often enough, we would go into like a stand-up, would mention a ticket, and the guys would say, oh, well, we did that one yesterday while we were doing the other thing because we knew it had to be done, you know. So that was all very, very proactive, which wasn't the same when we actually worked in the offices. That proactiveness wasn't there. That proactiveness has started because of, I would like to say the pandemic, but the other element that, and again, it's a very soft element, is that I think everybody felt, who came into the project, the SEAS project and the other COVID projects that HMRC was doing, felt a sense of, I think honour might be the wrong word, but it was felt that you were doing something. So you're watching the television every night and you're seeing, you know, the NHS, you know, struggling to manage the numbers, and you're sitting at home doing, I think before I went into SEAS, I was doing some Brexit work, and it just seemed kind of pointless, you know. I'm sitting at home and I'm doing this pointless thing, and these people are working off it. And of course, as soon as you got the invite to say, come and join the project and make a difference, it kind of, it sort of like ups your spirit and your doability. And I think everybody in the team felt that and went that extra mile to make sure that we were achieving. We had 3 million customers to service in potentially a week. And we had to do that as soon as possible. We were well aware that these people were struggling. And that gave you like that impetus.
Almost war effort type of status, isn't it? It's a status to the work that's very different and very immediate, I guess, versus some of the other things that the team might have been working on. Thanks, Steve. Fiona, for you on the Opencast side, you know, what's the onboarding process look like for developers? How has that changed, or how has that gone during the pandemic?
So for us, so we've got like two different types of onboardings. We've got onboarding into the company, where the developer would turn up on their first day, and there'd be like a little gift on their desk and some Opencast branded stuff in their laptop, and some other bits and bobs and some goodies. And you know, they still get all that stuff, but it comes through the post now. So it's obviously it's different, but we're still trying to do the same thing. I think the other type of onboarding we do is like when we onboard people into new projects or into existing projects. It's so that I think that's quite an interesting thing as a developer. If you're joining something and it's all remote now, so how do you do that knowledge transfer? How do you participate in some kind of kickoff of that project? And do you know what? I think our people have. They've coped remarkably well. Those exercises, you know, they're all still happening, if not happening even more. It's all, we've been able to do everything virtually, where we're bringing in technology. So we've been using a lot of whiteboarding, online whiteboarding software, things like Miro, which, you know, I actually beginning to prefer now, because those post-it notes I stick on that Miro board aren't going to fall on the floor, and then I haven't got to spend half an hour every morning wondering where the hell they're going to go. So and it's there forever, and you can move on to the next one, and you don't have to take it away. And I've found that there's certain things when I'm running like planning sessions or when I'm running code comprehension sessions and things like that I'm watching more for people's engagement in there, and I'm actually able to do that more, so I can see whether developers engaging and what's going on with the code base and in the technology discussions that we're having, because I'm there and I've actually been able to take a step back and let other people do it, because I'm not having to stand at the front of the room like I would normally do. So I think it's all happening and nothing's really changed. And do you know what? A bunch of our people are saying they prefer it. So I'm an introvert really, and so I actually prefer this way of working. It's actually better for me, and so I think I've heard that from a number of developers out there, that they're preferring. They can be part of the conversation in a way that they actually feel comfortable. You can choose how you want to participate in the technology conversations and the developer discussions and the testing discussions.
I think it's nice what you're saying. It's almost like we've had that evolution that we've been waiting for. A little bit like Alastair said earlier, we've had that evolution we've been waiting for, has kind of been forced and has been pushed. And now we're seeing kind of a lot of these tools being able to be used fully and properly without us kind of going back and leaning on the way things have been. And Kirste, your connection is back. So I'm going to bring you straight into the conversation. You know, from the NHS perspective, Lyle has asked a question here about how you found the pandemic situation affecting productivity and output. He goes on to say, this presumably is varied over the last few months, but at this current moment, would you say the productivity is the same, better, or less as a result of things such as working from home? So what have you seen in terms of productivity gains or losses, Kirste, NHS BSA?
So we've had, so our productivity has actually gone sky through the roof, partly because we've got such because we're a part of the NHS, there's such a sense of pride about wanting to make a difference, really wanting, you know, to give something back and to be able to support our colleagues on the front line. So, you know, people have, I know every sector's gone above and beyond. I can only observe the productivity within our teams, and they've been extraordinary over the last 8-9 months. We've always worked at quite a rate of change anyway, but the demands that we've had, literally, I think echoing some of the things that Alastair and Steve and Fiona have already said, we've had to respond to legislation changes within a really short 10-day period, or 27 days to get a product from ground up and out and being used by the
can you all still hear Kirste?
No.
Gosh, I wonder how the productivity is going with the kind of the internet connection dropping up and down. It's definitely something else we've kind of noticed. That and people speaking while they're on mute and then having to unmute themselves and kind of repeat themselves. So I'm going to... Kirste, you're back? Oh, no. Okay. All right. Oh, you are. Hey. Sorry. Continue on. Oh no, we can't. It's still. That's all right. No bother. So my next question I wanted to ask, and bring Alastair in, because you sit across a number of different places and have a number of positions, kind of obviously in Sunderland, but beyond. And so I think we've definitely seen kind of through COVID-19 a strengthening of global collaborations. But I want to say kind of if we keep it to the Northeast, that's what this is about, kind of best place in the country. What collaborative efforts have you seen in the Northeast kind of against COVID technically that you've been proud to see, shall we say, or that you've been impressed with?
No, I mean it's quite right. There's a whole set of things that have happened since COVID. We're all the universities are part of the Institute of Coding, and we work together closely anyway. But that it really has forced our hand and encouraged opportunity to work together, so that we're not reinventing each other's wheel. We've extended that out to look at addressing some of the challenges around digital skills for all. And so we've expanded and extended to work with our FE college partners and schools and look at how that we can provide that offer to pick up digital skills from digital skills for all, on that day-to-day business to retraining people to come. We've found the circumstances changing and potentially going into new jobs, whether it's in data science or cybersecurity or coding. And so our take up on Coding 101 has been through the roof, which is fantastic. Really exciting to see. The opportunity to do that education industry crossover has been great, and places like Dynamo have we've really looked at that partnership. We've always had it, but it really has been exemplified and exaggerated because of the need to address problems. I know you said keep it in the Northeast, but it does enable us to work with partners across the country and indeed beyond our national boundaries. So we've always in higher education had close links with different countries, but I can be in Botswana in the morning and be in Malaysia in the afternoon. I'm talking to colleagues in New Zealand this evening at 8 o'clock, and it's just that whole kind of relationship just changes, because it's talking to colleagues in New Zealand is exactly the same as talking to us, although in the Northeast. So it's fantastic in terms of removing any geographical constraints. And much as I miss traveling to London in a day there and back, 6 hours on the train is I can live without. Certainly I can live without the 14-hour flights to Kuala Lumpur each way. It's okay.
Yeah, the luxuries of Kuala Lumpur and traveling around. I think some of us are missing it. There are many of us who aren't missing the kind of going up and down.
I miss being in Kuala Lumpur. I just don't miss it.
But there's also the climate change element. But that's fine. Kirsty, if we can, I just heard you laughing. So quickly, I guess.
I know.
What's the collaboration look like? How have you been able to benefit from that during the pandemic?
It's been amazing, actually. I think it's one of the. I think we didn't really know how it was all going to work, and I have to say, our technology teams who rolled out this wonderful platform within the space of about 3 days, God love them, and then made sure we all had the right kit and shipped kit out and drove around the streets and made sure we're all.
Gone again for anyone else?
Right across.
Oh, back.
Oh, I'm back.
You're back,
this is so bad.
Back.
I'm so sorry for my internet. This is not normally my internet.
Oh, poor Kirste.
Oh no. Okay. All right, we'll keep it moving. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So one other thing that's been really close to my heart, and any of you can kind of pick up on this, is around digital accessibility. And working with STEMettes, there's, as Alastair was mentioning, there's been lots of young people that we work with who, coming into things, they've had laptops, they've had access to what we've been able to give them. But now it's been harder. I think even, Kirste and her data package as well, we're kind of struggling with a little bit. So for each of you, kind of this idea of accessibility, what's been your experience enabling that? At Stemets, we've ended up sending laptops out, paying for data packages, doing all that kind of thing. Steve, maybe Fiona, and also Alastair, what has that looked like in terms of allowing people to all have the same kind of access, to have this better experience that you've all been describing?
In HMRC, I mean,
maybe Fiona, do you want to get started?
Me?
Yes, yeah. Go for it.
I'm terrible at these things. I never know when to jump in or anything. Accessibility. Accessibility. Our staff to have the same experience, or even like our clients and our people that are on client sites all having the same experience has actually been a little bit easier, because in the past, running meetings around things, we've had some issues where we've had the team partially remote and then partially on site, and those people that are remote, they're at a massive disadvantage, and it's enabled us to. In the start, we invested quite heavily in some new technology, so we bought some really, really snazzy webcams and things like that to help with that, and microphones, and we put in things to help with the sound in rooms, and so it kind of feels like we're all on a level pegging with that. It's really interesting what you were saying about the whole accessibility for children, though, to technology. I know I've been reading in the news, which probably is what you're talking about, some things where children are missing out on their education because of that. Now, we saw that as Opencast, and we realised we've got this big cupboard full of actually really, really high-powered laptops which are sitting there doing anything. So we're in the middle of actually giving them out to a charity which is run out of Newcastle University at the moment. So we can do that. So that's one thing that we've tried to do as an organisation. And we've also been so we're actually really heavily involved with the STEM Ambassador program as well. So we've been actually still mentoring and running sessions for the STEM Ambassador in different schools across the Northeast. And actually I've done some stuff in Wales because of the pandemic and everything's remote. So I've actually managed to talk to a group of girls in Wales around what does an actual technology career look like, because it's nothing like what the teacher at school. So it's been great.
I hope you mentioned the cheese and the chocolate to them, because that's
I did. I've got my favourite project that I always talk to them about as well, when we went on a mission to save a load of bats in America with some really, really high-powered IoT technology, and everybody goes, "Oh, I wouldn't have thought you'd be able to do that with technology now."
Brilliant. Absolutely love it. You need to tell me more about the bats and IoT. I want to hear all about that. Yeah. I think maybe final 2 minutes. So Steve, with HMRC SAYS, what's been what's your accessibility side of things look like? Has that been something you've been concerned about or having to work through? I know definitely with a new system, it definitely would have been kind of one of the bigger concerns, right?
I mean, obviously.
By the way, sorry, Steve. Let's unmute you. There you go. Go for it.
All right. Yeah. It's the service itself. Obviously, HMRC puts an emphasis to make sure that we're covering the digitally excluded customers or people with disabilities. We have to follow the standards. So, I mean, as far as accessibility goes within the team, obviously the team are all equipped with the necessary equipment when they join, so that's not an issue. But we did have to make particular effort to pick up the customers who may not have the equipment. So the self-employed customer who, for whatever reason, tends to file their return through an agent only, and therefore never engages with us. Part of the legislation stated that they must they must engage with us directly, and it mustn't be the agent. And we had to put checks in from policy to make sure that it wasn't agents that we were dealing with, because the Chancellor stated quite frankly that the money had to go straight to the individual. That meant that you do have a portion of society who just doesn't want to engage either with HMRC digitally or can't. So what we did is we kind of duplicated our service, and so like launched another service within our call centre, so the call handlers could actually take customers through exactly the same journey as they could if the customer was doing it themselves. So that was our digitally excluded kind of journey. I think we saw the main journey had something like 3.5 million customers used the service, and that was within a 2-week window, and it was something like 200,000 customers used our internal service via the call handlers. That's
brilliant. Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show we always have to think about the others and think about the difference. So lots of lessons learnt there. I hope there's lots of inspiration and lots of ways that we know we can be devs against COVID, maybe devs for COVID, devs during COVID, that have been able to kind of make the most of the situation. So big thank you to my panelists for joining us. Thanks to, I think it's about 125 of you who joined us to listen on to that conversation. Thanks to Kirste for showing us kind of tech doesn't always work, and the show must go on. So thank you very much to all of you. So thank you, Fiona, thank you, Kirste, thank you, Alastair, thank you, Steve, and thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.